Hey there. First, I just wanted to express my gratitude for your interest in my videos, and I love feedback, and that's really what I'm here for, is to discuss these ideas. I have not listened to part two yet, but I wanted to respond to part one. Um, it's true that science has sort of put off the study of consciousness uh, and is only now beginning to take it up in a serious way. And I think it did that because studying consciousness cannot be done in the traditionally empirical way, which you said, because traditional empiricism requires a sort of distance and objectivity from the phenomenon. But when the phenomenon is your awareness itself, in order to study it, you can't stand back and hold the ruler up to it and gauge it that way. You have to jump right in. And so studying consciousness is transformative. And if you as a scientist are not willing to transform your consciousness, to transform the very way you experience the world, you're not going to get anywhere. And you may as well assume that consciousness doesn't even exist. As soon as you start to acknowledge what consciousness is, I think it starts to become clear that there are many states of consciousness. We do empirical science. For the most part, we, at least traditionally, have assumed that there is one valid kind of consciousness, and it is the rational, egoic uh, subject, the Cartesian ego, and that all other forms of consciousness are somehow marginal or not real, not as valid as the ego or the rational mind. And that needs to go out the window if science is going to genuinely study consciousness. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with William James, but he had this concept of radical empiricism, which was sort of his response to this traditional form of scientific empiricism, um, which paid too much attention to sensory data and sort of ignored the context of that in consciousness, which is the meaning, the value that we assign to that data. And William James developed this notion of radical empiricism, meaning not only do we observe what our senses pick up from the world, but we must observe how we subjectively react to them, how we emotionally respond, um, type of meaning we derive from the sensory experience. All of that is an aspect of reality, and if science ignores that aspect of reality, well, it's no longer science is no longer universally valid. It's valid for the specific way in which it chooses to observe the world, but the world is not limited by what science chooses to admit into its worldview. And so James was trying to open up science to all of the possibilities of consciousness. Of course, like you said, there have always been, in fact, most of the real geniuses uh, of science have been spiritual and mystical. Einstein was certainly spiritual. Lots of physicists, which is strange, as you would think physics is the most reductionistic science, but in the last 100 years, what with quantum physics showing that branch of science that the material world is not at all what we originally suspected, what science originally suspected. So, you'll have guys like Sir Arthur Eddington and Wolfgang Pauli. Wolfgang Pauli actually collaborated with Carl Jung, trying to connect archetypes and consciousness to physics to see how consciousness could exist in some sense physical. Um, and I think when you have a scientist that is like Richard Dawkins, for example, seems almost emotionally. Um, he he reacts emotionally to religion in a sense that he doesn't even give it a chance. He's already decided that anything which cannot be explained reductionistically is non-existent, or at least not worth his consideration. And I think that's very limiting for science. And I like scientists who are able to keep an open mind about spirituality, because if you don't, then greater human values and meaning that all of our lives require sort of becomes less important than the scientific data, and that's not only unfortunate, it seems dangerous to me. Science is totally cut off from morality, because then we get the atom bomb and things of that nature, where scientific progress takes precedence over the quality of human life. So I'm going to listen to part 2 and that as well.